Imagine waking up to find you lived a full day that never existed. In Santa Lucia, an antique clock did that to me. And worse, it didn't stop. With each toll, reality cracked. Today, I tell how I tried to destroy it, and the price I almost paid. The first time the clock stole a day, I thought I'd lost my mind. It was a rainy Tuesday in Cedar Falls, Iowa, and the old wall clock inside Gerald's Antiques, that dusty secret-filled shop on Oak Street, began chiming midnight with a deep metallic groan that seemed to tear the fabric of silence. I, Peter, was finishing a plumbing job in the basement of the building next door. My wife Anna slept 3 blocks away at home, and the world slid sideways. I woke in my own body, but not in my own bed. I was back under the sink in Gerald's building, tools in hand, cold sweat trickling down my spine. It was Monday night, 11:50 p.m., according to my phone. But I remembered. I remembered with sharp, painful clarity. I remembered the Tuesday that never happened. Lunch with Anna, the silly argument about bills, the smell of rain in the air as I left for the job. A phantom memory, hot and undeniably real, crashing into the cold reality of that basement. In the days that followed, madness settled in with cruel subtlety. No one else seemed to notice, only me. Gerald's clock told its 12 ghostly chimes at midnight sharp, and its radius, I discovered with mounting terror, was roughly 500 yards. Anyone within that invisible circle mentally regressed 24 hours. They'd wake thinking it was the previous day, repeating actions, saying the same words. But the memories of the cancelled future, those remained, like deep scars on the mind. I saw the baker, Mike, rub his eyes in confusion, swearing he'd already baked that morning's bread. I saw Mrs. Henderson, my neighbor, try to kiss her husband who died 2 years prior, weeping because she vividly remembered bumping into him at the grocery store on that day which only existed in her fractured mind. The worst was seeing Anna, waking and hugging me with a sleepy smile, asking about plans for Saturday. Plans that, in the normal flow of time, we'd already lived and discussed during the phantom day. The love in her eyes mixed with an unspoken undercurrent of bewilderment, an echo of the intrusive memory she couldn't grasp. I felt like a spectator in a macabre play, the only one who knew the script repeating itself with terrifying, minor glitches. The repetitions weren't perfect. It's here, friend listening to me now, that the true horror began to shred the veil. Are you safe where you are, certain your reality is solid? Because after the third stolen midnight, the fissures appeared. First came the phantom objects. The coffee mug Anna dropped on Phantom Tuesday appeared on the table on Real Wednesday, intact for a fleeting instant, before dissolving like smoke. I saw Mrs. Henderson's cat, Whiskers, run over a week prior, scratching at her door, translucent and silent, before evaporating with a sigh of cold wind. Then came the duplicated people. I saw 2 identical grocery delivery guys, carrying the same bag to the same house, on the same sidewalk. One walked straight through a lamppost as if it weren't there. The other, the solid one, stared at the empty space where his double had been with pure panic before moving on as if nothing happened. The air in Cedar Falls grew thick, heavy with ozone and palpable static, and a constant hum, almost below hearing, filled the silences, making teeth grind involuntarily. The 5th repetition brought the holes in time. Walking down Oak Street, I felt a sudden glacial cold and saw, for a split second, the same stretch of road covered in thick snow, with wooden wagons instead of cars. I caught fragments of conversations in archaic English, whispers bleeding from within solid brick walls. The basement of Gerald's building, ground zero for this evil, became a forbidden zone. The light constantly failed, flickering like a dying eye, and shadows moved independently, coiling into fleeting humanoid shapes that dissolved when stared at. The smell of old metal and wet earth, the same as the clocks, saturated the place with suffocating intensity. Old man Gerald, the antique dealer, was an empty shell. He walked like a sleepwalker, his glazed eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the walls, muttering disconnected dates that made no sense. 1888, 1923, 1999, all together, all wrong. He seemed the unwilling guardian of that infernal machine, trapped perhaps in the first repetition, or in hundreds, his mind reduced to temporal rubble. Anna began to unravel, physically. After the seventh midnight, I noticed a strange transparency at the tips of her fingers, as if they were dissolving. She didn't notice. She kept repeating routines, but with frightening lapses. She'd make breakfast and forget the bread in the toaster until it charred, staring at the flames with a disturbing emptiness in her eyes. One morning, I woke to see a second Anna, ghostly and silently weeping, sitting on the edge of the bed beside the solid Anna who still slept. The phantom double looked at me with eyes begging for an end I couldn't give, before vanishing like mist in sunlight. That's when I realized the fissures were reaching me too. My own memories began to dangerously scramble. Childhood recollections from Chicago mixed with sharp fragments of the repeated days and fleeting glimpses of impossible, dark futures. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, not cardiac, but the visceral, physical sensation of reality tearing apart around me, stitch by stitch. The night of the ninth repetition was the prelude to the end. The constant hum was deafening, hammering inside the skull. The night sky over Cedar Falls pulsed with strange lights, green and purple auroras where none should exist. House walls sweated a black, oily substance that dripped to the ground. Animals howled in chorus through the town, driven mad. I saw a hole in time rip open in the town square. Through it, I glimpsed a distorted, apocalyptic version of Cedar Falls, buildings crumbling under a blood-red sky, indistinct humanoid figures dragging themselves over smoldering rubble. The hole snapped shut with a dry, repulsive crack, leaving the acrid smell of burnt meat hanging in the air. I knew, with an icy certainty, I couldn't let the clock chime again. The 10th midnight would erase what remained of us, turning Cedar Falls into a patchwork quilt of shattered times, inhabited only by echoes and shadows of lives never fully lived. Armed with a heavy crowbar and a flashlight whose beam trembled like a dying heart, I broke into the antique shop in the twilight gloom. The place was unrecognizable. Furniture floated inches above the floor, swaying slightly. Books fluttered like sick paper birds, pages whispering incoherent secrets. Ordinary dust glowed with a sickly blue-green phosphorescence. The basement was an open portal to the nightmare. The air was freezing and thick, hard to breathe, like swimming in oil. Shadows twisted with their own life, forming creatures with elongated limbs and toothless mouths stretched in silent screams of agony. The clock hung on the exposed brick wall. It was no longer just wood and brass. It throbbed with an internal light, faint and menacing, like a diseased heart struggling. Nauseatingly complex patterns writhed beneath the glass face. The hands trembled, straining to reach the fatal zenith. Old man Gerald sat hunched in a dark corner, curled like a fetus. He wasn't a man anymore, but a grotesque collection of mismatched parts. One arm seemed young and strong, the other was wrinkled and age-spotted. One eye was his own, glazed and lifeless. The other was large, clear, and blue, unmistakably a child's. He moaned, a wet, desperate sound from somewhere deep within, while parts of his body flickered, shifting between solidity and frightening transparency. I ignored the horror he represented. The clock was the cancer, the core of the evil, and I had to excise it before it was too late. I advanced, feeling icy shadow fingers trying to grasp me, whispers swelling into mental shrieks threatening to burst my skull. The hum was a chainsaw grinding inside my brain. I reached the clock. Its surface was cold as winter tombstone and vibrated like a swarm of furious wasps. I raised the crowbar, every muscle screaming with terror and supreme effort. The minute hand was a hair's breadth from the 12. No time to hesitate, to think. I struck with all my remaining strength, all my accumulated rage and terror. The metal met the glass with a musical, perverse shattering sound. The glass didn't break, it dissolved like ice in fire, swallowing the crowbar's tip greedily. An impossible, high-pitched shriek, not from the clock, but from time itself being violated, tore through the air, making bones vibrate. Blinding light, white and pure as death, exploded from the shattered face. It felt like being hit full force by a runaway train. The blast hurled me backward violently against rotting shelves. The light flooded the basement, bathing the writhing, screaming shadows, Gerald convulsing in silent agony. The floating objects swept away. For one infinite, terrifying instant, I saw everything. All the timelines entwined like serpents, all the repetitions, all the Annas, all the Peters, all the versions of Cedar Falls overlapping and colliding like monstrous waves in a tempestuous sea. I saw the clock's core, not a machine, but a pulsating dark thing, a vortex of pure absence sucking reality into itself. Then, the light cut out. Suddenly, the darkness that followed was absolute, silent, and heavy as a shroud of lead. The flashlight was dead, inert. I groaned, trying to rise in the pitch blackness. My bones ached as if pulverized, but seemed intact. The constant hum, that sonic hell, had ceased. The silence was oppressive, complete, almost tangible. I groped for where the clock had been. On the wall, under my trembling fingers, was only a rough, dark smear, like a deep burn, and a strong, acrid smell of ozone and molten metal. The clock was gone, vanished. I dragged myself out of the basement, into the collapsed, silent shop. The night outside seemed normal. The starry sky, the cool pre-dawn air. No strange lights pulsed, no menacing hum filled the void. I stumbled home, flinching at every ordinary shadow. The house was silent, peaceful. I entered the bedroom. Anna slept, solid, whole. No transparency. I breathed a sigh of relief, a wave of fatigue so deep it nearly dropped me then and there. Maybe it had worked. Maybe the nightmare was truly over. I lay down beside her, closing my heavy eyes, trying to believe in normality, in the solidity of the world. That's when I heard it. Faint, distant, coming from somewhere deep, maybe the bottom of the old well in the backyard, or the cracked foundations of the world itself. A metallic sound, deep and resonant. One toll. Another. Another. 11 times. One was missing. My blood froze instantly in my veins. I looked at the digital clock on the nightstand. 11:59 p.m. The silence that followed the 11 tolls was the most terrifying thing I've ever known. Deeper than the vacuum between stars. I waited, paralyzed. Every beat of my own heart was a thunderclap in that absolute silence. And then, when the digital clock changed to midnight, it echoed from the depths of the earth, from the depths of time itself, the 12th toll. A final sound, solitary, triumphant, and profoundly ancient, like an iron gate slamming shut. It wasn't the end. It was just a new cycle beginning. And this time, the dawning light brought a sun with a subtle, undeniable violet tinge. And the bathroom mirror, when I passed it the next morning, showed for a split second a reflection that wasn't quite mine. It was older, scarred, and it smiled, an empty smile that didn't reach the eyes. If you feel a sudden chill or see a shadow in your periphery, it might be too late. I took a drug that reveals the invisible. And I learned ghost children deliver envelopes with your death date. My friend ignored his. The next day, he died exactly as written. The first time I saw the children was 3 hours after injecting the third vial of fancy into my arm, in that stinking alley behind the old cinema in Millhaven, Maine. They stood there, frozen under the alley's single broken lamp, 3 small figures indistinct as poorly cut shadows, watching. not shadows. They had form, but a form that hurt the eyes, like trying to focus on a nightmare just before waking. They wore old-fashioned clothes, faded, the kind my grandmother wore in black and white photos. Their faces were too pale, almost translucent under the yellow light, and their eyes, huge and black as oil pits, reflected nothing but the darkness behind me. The smallest one held a pale yellow envelope. My heart froze. I knew, with a deep, icy certainty burning through my veins from the drug, that envelope was for me. Fancy didn't lie. It opened doors, the desperate souls in the outskirts of Portland said. Doors to things nobody wanted to see. Me, Liam, was seeing. And those children, silent as tombs, delivered the first warning. Fancy was the town's dirty secret, not found in common dives. Edward, the ex-pharmacist living near the abandoned overpass, had the supply. A viscous, turquoise-blue liquid promising escape from the gray reality, showing colors that didn't exist, hearing music from beyond the silence. It promised, too, a swift, cruel addiction, and visions that clung to the skin like tar. The children were the ultimate vision. They only appeared to advanced stage addicts, those who'd crossed a point of no return. And they always brought an envelope. Inside, a thin sheet of paper, almost parchment, completely blank. Until the exact moment. Brandon, my friend since trade school, was the first to laugh when I tried to talk about the children. We were in my tiny apartment in Cedarville, windows shut against the garbage smell rising from the street. I trembled, the pale yellow envelope heavy as lead in my pocket. He spat the words with disdain, lighting another cigarette. I pleaded, showed him the blank paper, talked about the black eyes, the cold radiating from them. Nothing. Brandon only saw a strung-out junkie, scared of shadows. 2 days later, he called me, voice hoarse, near tears. A child had appeared in his room. At night. With an envelope. His voice broke. What do I do? I said don't ignore it, take it seriously, keep the paper close. He laughed again, a dry, humorless sound. Ignored it. Ignored the girl in the faded blue dress who stood at the foot of his bed for 3 nights straight, black eyes fixed. On the 4th night, Brandon went out drinking. He tore up the paper and tossed it in the building's dumpster. Walking home across the bridge over Willow Creek in a fine rain, the torn paper suddenly appeared, stuck like a dirty bandage to his palm. The ink, a bright red like fresh blood, surfaced in elegant, terrible cursive, predicting he'd slip on a wet step, fall, hit his head, and drown in a shallow puddle. He told me this over the phone, absolute panic in his voice, as he walked. I heard a sharp cry, the dull thud of a heavy body falling, the hiss of the phone dropping into water, and then silence. They found Brandon face down in a puddle the next morning, drowned as predicted, the red paper gone. Ignoring was fatal. The ink only appeared when the event was about to happen, a last-minute warning impossible to avoid, only witness. After Brandon, paranoia moved in like a malignant tenant in my mind. I took more fancy, not for pleasure now, but out of need. I needed to see the children before they arrived. I needed the warning. They appeared in banal places, turning the mundane into nightmare. In the bank line in Riverton, a boy in a tattered straw hat leaning against the ATM, handing an envelope to a man in a suit who couldn't see him. On the crowded bus to Oak Mills, a girl sitting on an old lady's lap, both invisible to everyone but me, the girl pressing an envelope against the sleeping woman's chest. The recipients, the addicts like me, had an aura, a sickly, dull glow only I, under Fancy's heavy influence, could perceive. It was a club of the damned, bound by terror and the chemistry destroying us. I received more envelopes. One predicted the roof collapse at the market where my mother bought bread. The paper stayed pristine until the exact moment the first shingles started to give way. Black letters surfaced, predicting a woman in a floral dress being crushed. I dragged my mother out seconds before, her protesting, the floral dress intact. The sound of splitting wood, the scream of the woman I couldn't save, still echo in my ears during the night silences. Another letter predicted a fire in the building next door. The ink, a sooty gray, surfaced when the first overheated wire began to sizzle inside the wall, predicting the fire devouring the third floor. No time to warn, only to watch the hell begin, helpless. My health withered. Fancy was acid in my veins. I lost weight, my eyes sunk into bruised hollows, my hands shook constantly. The drug smell, sweet and rotten at once, seemed to saturate my skin, my clothes, my soul. The children started appearing closer, more often. Not just at night. In the bathroom at work, reflected in the steam-fogged mirror behind me, silent. At my apartment window, looking in, even on the 10th floor, their pale faces floating in the darkness. The cold they brought was physical, a gelid air that made breath vapor freeze even in a Maine summer. And always, always with an envelope. Resigned acceptance mixed with dread. I kept the envelopes like cursed relics in an old shoebox under the bed. I knew one day, one would be for me. I knew when the ink appeared, it would be the end. The question wasn't if, but when and how. It's here, you listening comfortably now, that I need to ask a question. I feel you're there, on the other side, maybe comfortable, safe. But think hard. Ever felt a sudden chill for no reason? A shiver down your spine when alone? Ever seen, out the corner of your eye, a shadow that vanished when you looked straight at it? Is it really imagination? Or is it just that you haven't taken the right dose yet to see what's really there, watching, waiting? Terror lives in the dark corners of perception, friend. And the children, they know how to wait. The final letter came on a rainy Thursday. I was in my Millhaven apartment, trying to read a book to forget the need for the next dose, when the air turned icy. The sickly sweet stink of fancy filled the room, though I hadn't injected anything. She was in the corner, the smallest girl from the first time. Her dress, once merely faded, now looked like soaked rags. Her black eyes were bottomless pits. She stretched out her arm, the pale yellow envelope now almost white, trembling in her tiny hand. My blood seemed to stop. Take the envelope. Don't run. Don't scream. Don't ignore. Just take it and wait for the inevitable. My legs moved like lead weights towards her. The envelope's touch was freezing, like dry ice. She didn't vanish. She stayed there, watching, as I backed against the wall, sliding down, the envelope clutched to my chest. The paper was empty, white as bone. Hours crawled by. Night fell. The child remained in the corner, a statue of ice and shadow. Sleep was impossible. Every second was agony, waiting for the stroke of ink that would seal my fate. It was in the pre-dawn, when the first ray of sun tried piercing the wet mist always hanging over Willow Creek Valley, that the needle of my agony plunged. A tremor ran through the paper in my hands. I looked. Nothing. Looked again. And there it was, surfacing like a damp stain, but it wasn't damp. It was ink. Red. Blood red. Forming words in a childish, crooked scrawl, terrifyingly innocent and cruel. Predicting the tired man would open the door, see his own fallen body, heart stopped from fear now. The words completed themselves. A heavy, dull pounding echoed against my apartment door. 3 times, spaced, weighty, making the wood shudder slightly. Fear, a living, spiny creature, coiled in my throat. The child in the corner tilted her head to one side, a movement inhumanly fast. Her thin lips stretched, not into a smile, but into a slit, a dark crack in her pale face. Opening the door was suicide. Not opening was ignoring. And ignoring was fatal. I knew the predicted fate would unfold. door open or not. The letter didn't fail. The pounding continued. Rhythmic. Inexorable. Like the amplified tick-tock of a giant clock counting my last seconds. I looked at the child. She pointed a skeletal finger towards the door. A silent command. I stood up, legs weak. Each step towards the door was like wading against an icy current. The smell of fancy now mingled with a deeper odor of wet earth and old meat. My hand closed on the cold metal knob. I took a deep breath, the air burning my lungs. I opened the door. The hallway was empty, cold, poorly lit by a flickering bulb at the far end. And there, on the concrete floor, right before my door, was my body, my own self, wearing the same worn shirt, the same old jeans. My face, pale, eyes wide in eternal terror, mouth open in a silent scream. One hand was clutched over the chest, as if trying to hold in something escaping. Its heart stopped from fear. As predicted, a vacuum opened inside me, a free fall without end. Not a hallucination. Solid. Real. I was dead there, and I was still alive here, looking. The paradox tore my mind apart. I heard a sound behind me. The faint scrape of tiny feet. I turned, slow, heavy. The child was beside me, looking at my body on the floor, then at me. Her black eyes, those bottomless pits, seemed to hold a spark of something, a terrible satisfaction. She pointed again, not at the body, but into my chest, at my own heart, beating desperately. Then she raised her skeletal little hand and made a swift motion, like cutting an invisible thread in the air. An acute, deep, tearing pain exploded in my chest. An immense, crushing weight. My vision darkened at the edges. I fell to my knees, the concrete's cold biting through my jeans. The last thing I saw, before the darkness swallowed me whole, was the child kneeling beside my fallen body, her ghostly little hand touching the corpse's face with a macabre curiosity. And then, only darkness, and the distant, triumphant echo of a child's laughter, thin as shattered glass, coming from somewhere very deep, very old, beyond the door I never should have opened. Look at your feet right now. Are your shoes identical? In São Tomé das Letras, that's an invitation to death. My wife wore matching boots. The next day, I saw unknown footprints beside hers in the fog, and something walking superimposed over her. Today, I tell how we fled the thing hunting us. The first unknown footprint appeared on my porch that rainy Tuesday, pressed into the muddy puddle beside mine, as if someone had paused to watch me unroll the damp newspaper. The chill started at the base of my spine and climbed to my teeth, a cold utterly separate from the damp wind whistling through Solitude, West Virginia. I knew what it meant. Everyone in Raven's Hollow knew, had known since childhood. It was the most fundamental, most sacred rule for survival here, in this town nestled deep in the Appalachian gloom where shadows seem to have their own weight. No one ever, under any circumstances, wore matching pairs of shoes. Twin shoes were an invitation, and the guest always accepted. My name is Luke. I've lived here 30 years, inherited my grandparents' creaky clapboard house on Sycamore Street. I fix appliances, a quiet life. Until that day. Those footprints were large, larger than mine, barefoot, yet with an unervingly crisp definition, like feet carved from polished stone pressing into the mud. There was no trail leading to or from them. Just those two deep impressions, side by side with mine on the confined porch space. I ignored the nausea rising in my throat. I swept the water violently, erasing the evidence. Maybe it was imagination. Maybe the rain, the fatigue. Lies we tell ourselves to stave off madness. The shoe rule was as ingrained as breathing. My wife Anna, had a closet full of lonely shoes, each one unique, waiting for its mismatched partner to be found at flea markets or the dusty shops on Main Street. One brown loafer, one oxblood, one blue sneaker, one black. Wearing a matching pair was slow suicide. It attracted him. The thing that walks beside. No one saw him, not fully. You felt him, an extra weight on your shoulders, a sudden chill, a smell of wet earth and old bones. And the footprints. Always the footprints. Appearing beside yours, in the damp riverbank sand, in the dirt road dust, in the morning fog on the grass. When you saw your own prints accompanied by unknown ones, you knew you were being followed. You knew he was wearing your twin shoes, walking superimposed over you, step for step, until he decided to walk alone, taking you somewhere no one returned from. Old Elias, the town's crumbling librarian, said he was older than the hollow, a hunger dressed in shadow that fed on the mistake, the forbidden symmetry. It began with a gift. Anna, ever practical, bought a new pair of sturdy leather work boots for her job at the Blackwood dairy farm. Boots identical, a rich brown. Cheap and efficient, she argued. I pleaded, I begged. I reminded her of Old Man Henderson, who wore matching galoshes to muck out the stables and was found 3 days later, miles away, barefoot and feet bloodied. The shoes vanished, with 2 sets of prints leading from the mud to where he lay, babbling about the weight on his back. Anna laughed, called it small-town superstition. The real dangers were snakes, ornery bulls, not boogeyman tales. She wore the boots. 3 days later, I found the first strange print on the packed earth floor of the garage, beside the clean marks of Anna's new boots. Large, barefoot, with that same abnormal clarity as the porch print. My heart hammered. I told Anna. She looked, shrugged. Some old track, Luke. Rain, wind. Stop it. But her tone lacked conviction. I saw the flicker of doubt in her hazel eyes. That night, I woke under an immense weight on my chest, like a cold river stone pressing down. The bedroom air was icy, despite the warmth. A thick smell of damp soil and something decaying filled my nostrils. Anna slept deeply beside me, but her skin was cold. So cold. I sat up, gasping, eyes straining into the darkness. Nothing. Just the weight, the cold, the smell. And a deep, visceral certainty that I wasn't alone. That something shared my body space, shod in the same boots Anna wore. The next morning brought thick fog, the kind that swallows houses and pines whole. Anna went to the farm, stubborn, wearing the cursed boots. I stayed, paralyzed by dread. By noon, the fog hadn't lifted. I went out, driven by an irrational urge to find her, bring her back. The streets were deserted, silent, the world reduced to shades of gray. That's when I saw them. On the wet dirt road, clear as day, the prints. Anna's work boots, recognizable by the new tread pattern. And right beside them, so close they nearly overlapped, the other footprints. Large, barefoot, deeply gouged into the mud, as if bearing colossal weight. They followed Anna. He was with her, walking superimposed, sharing every step. My stomach lurched. I ran, following the trail, primitive terror driving me. The prints led out of town, towards the old logging road snaking into the Blackwood pines. It's here, you listening now, that I ask you a question. Look down, at your own feet. What shoes are you wearing today? Are they identical? Perfectly symmetrical? Comfortable? Familiar? Feel their weight. Now imagine. Imagine feeling another weight, overlapping yours. A chill that isn't from outside. A smell of an open grave. And knowing beyond any doubt that when you look back at the next wet patch, the next puddle, the next foggy dawn, you'll see not just your own trail, but another. A set of footprints that shouldn't be there. Walking beside yours. step for step. To where? Ask yourself while you still can. Have you ever seen strange footprints and ignored them? Are the shoes you're wearing right now somehow a terrible invitation? I ran down the old logging road, the fog clinging like a damp shroud. The pine forest seemed denser, darker, the tall trunks like pillars in a shadowed cathedral. The footprints were my only compass in the milky white. Anna's boots, steady. The large bare footprints, always beside, always close. The gap between them seemed to shrink. My heart slammed against my ribs, breath burning in my lungs. The smell of wet earth and decay intensified, becoming suffocating. It was his smell. The smell of the thing that walks beside. A figure materialized ahead, shrouded in mist. Anna, standing motionless in the middle of the road, back turned. "Anna!" I shouted, voice raw with effort and fear. She didn't turn, didn't move. I ran harder, closed the distance. 10 yards. 5. Anna. Then I saw. She wasn't alone. There was a density in the air around her, a distortion in the fog, like heat haze off asphalt, but cold, freezing. A darker silhouette, indistinct but undeniably tall, seemed to hover just behind her, almost fused to her back. No details, just an impression of unnatural height and a darkness that swallowed the weak light. It was him, walking superimposed, wearing the twin boots through her. Anna trembled visibly, shoulders shaking silently. Her feet, in the identical boots, seemed rooted to the ground. The large bare footprints were almost directly beneath hers now, occupying the same physical space. The air crackled with static pressure, raising the hairs on my arms. The stench was overwhelming. "Anna," I whispered, reaching within an arm's length, afraid to touch that aura of horror. She turned slowly. Her face was a mask of absolute terror, eyes wide, pupils dilated until they nearly swallowed the hazel irises. Mouth open in a silent, frozen scream. Her skin was deathly pale, almost blue, and cold as marble when my hand instinctively brushed her arm. She didn't react. Her eyes didn't see me. They saw something over my shoulder, something behind me, something that paralyzed her with a fear so deep it had severed her connection to reality. I followed her petrified gaze. Turn, slow, every movement a superhuman effort. Behind me, on the foggy road, were fresh prints. Mine, coming from town. And beside them, impossibly close, the large bare footprints. They hadn't been there when I ran. Couldn't have been. But they were. Fresh. Deep. He wasn't just with Anna. He was with me too. I'd attracted him, chasing Anna, entering his hunting ground. The weight in the bedroom, the cold, the smell. It wasn't just Anna being followed. It was him marking his territory, including me in the macabre dance. The prints beside me were the confirmation. I was being followed. To prey for one hungry entity. The distortion behind Anna began to solidify. The darkness gained sharper contours, not of a body, but of an absence given shape, a human silhouette made of vacuum and thick shadow, sucking the mist around it. It was tall, impossibly thin, with limbs grotesquely long. No face, just a deeper blotch where it should be, but I felt a heavy, fixed gaze from it, divided between Anna and me. The cold became brutal. My breath plumed thick white vapor. The smell of decay choked me. Anna finally made a sound, a low, broken moan escaping her frozen throat. Her body began to shake uncontrollably, not from fear, but as if jolted by a violent current. The identical boots on the ground seemed to vibrate. The shadow silhouette took a step. Not a physical step, but a distinct sensation of forward movement. Anna screamed. A high, piercing shriek of pure agony and terror, echoing in the silent woods. Her body arched backward against the dark presence, as if pulled by invisible wires. I saw with terrifying clarity the boots on the ground lift, not by her feet, but as if something unseen, something inside her or upon her, was wearing them. She was being used, like a puppet. Her eyes rolled back, showing the whites. Pink foam bubbled at the corners of her mouth. The scream cut off abruptly, replaced by harsh, ragged gasps. The dark silhouette seemed to pulse, satisfied, feeding. Pure survival instinct took over. I didn't think. I moved. I lunged, not towards Anna, but sideways, off the road onto the soft earth beyond the prince. My movement was sudden, unpredictable. The thing's attention, or part of it, snapped to me. The weight on my shoulders increased tenfold, like an iceberg crushing me. I nearly collapsed. The invisible gaze from that faceless blotch burned my neck. The large bare footprints beside mine seemed to sink deeper into the mud, even though I stood still. A warning. A reminder of my shared fate. Anna was being consumed right there. Her tremors weakened. Her breathing grew fainter, more labored. The dark silhouette enveloped her almost completely now, like a living shroud of shadow. There was no time for heroics. Only dirty escape. I turned and ran. Not down the road, where the prince marked me, but into the woods, through the pines, stomping on roots, branches, pine needles, anything that wouldn't leave a clean trail, an invitation. The weight on my back was unbearable, dragging me down. The cold seared my lungs. The smell of death clung to me, saturating clothes, skin. I heard, or rather felt, a silent roar of frustration from behind, a wave of pure rage that made nearby pine needles tremble without wind. Anna made no more sound. I didn't look back. I knew what I'd left. An ancient creature cheated of its full meal. And now, its full attention, its unsatisfied hunger, was fixed on me. The pursued one. The one who'd worn ordinary shoes all his life, until that day. The one who saw the print on the porch and tried to ignore it. I ran until my legs gave out, lungs screaming. I collapsed in a small clearing, rolling on damp pine needles. The woods were silent. Abnormally silent. No birds, no insects. Only the frantic drumming of my own heart and my ragged breath. The weight on my back had lessened, but not vanished. The cold persisted. The smell of earth and rot was fainter, but present. I lifted my eyes, dreading the worst. The clearing was empty. No dark figure. No shadow. Relief washed over me, thin and cold. I swallowed hard, forced myself to stand. I needed to get back to town, find help, warn someone. Though I knew, deep down, no one could help. The rule existed for a reason. I'd broken it, indirectly, by failing to convince Anna. Now I paid the price. Then I looked down at the damp earth of the clearing where I'd fallen. My blood froze instantly. There they were. My own footprints, chaotic, marking my collapse. And right beside them, clear, impossible, undeniable. The large bare footprints. They had followed me. Through the thick woods, over the needles, over the roots. They were there. Fresh. Beside mine. As they always would be. He hadn't given up. He was merely waiting. Patient. Implacable. I was marked. The footprints were the sentence. As long as I walked, he would walk with me, wearing the same air, the same fear, the same living space. Until the day he decided to walk alone, taking me away to where only one set of prints would remain. The large ones. The bare ones. The final ones. I looked down at my own feet, caked in mud, wearing old worn shoes, but still a pair. An identical pair. The invitation was still open, and the guest never truly leaves. He just waits for the next step, the next puddle, the next foggy morning, the next time you look down and see, beside your own, a footprint that belongs to no one, to nothing human.